Let's take one last walk to the plant and end up back here, okay?
I'm fine with that.
We didn't really spend any time here during the audit, but we don't have to, do we? You know what this place is?
What's that?
A symptom. This wasn't here yesterday. Is this your impounded material?
Yes, it is.
Is this all of it?
Not even close. To tell the truth, I still don't know how much of it there is.
These 3 boxes are still here. Even though all 3 of those technicians supposedly knew what to do, namely take the bad one to the non-conforming cage, none of them actually did it.
No changes in here either. Brian is still Brian.
I'm conflicted about this stuff. It's been here since yesterday, and on one hand I'm glad Rufus didn't put it into inventory. I'm annoyed that it isn't properly identified yet. How much time does it take to put a hazmat sticker on it?
No changes here either. Let's keep moving. I'm concerned about this. The scale is still showing 50, which means nobody fixed it and nobody shut it down. How do you feel about that emotionally?
I'm very angry about it. These people are actually producing more defective product. Well, this figures. Looks like these 2 are not taking the bad news very seriously.
I've stopped being surprised. Well, thanks for the good guy work, Carol. We still have a couple more things to audit, and then we can have the closing meeting. Let's pull up the internal audit report if there is such a thing, and then look at the corrective action system.
My pleasure.
Okay, let's look at their internal audit records. They might be informative. Auditor is Miriam, aided by AI. Well, Miriam is internalizing a lot of this. Hey, it's a correctly completed audit matrix. Almost no one does these right. Good for Miriam. Let's see if she had any findings. 27 findings? Oh, but look, they're all about some documentation issue or something about the paperwork. She's internalized all of this. She wrote something up for being on the wrong letterhead, but she is in charge of the letterhead. It doesn't really have any effect on what happens in production or in the warehouse. Let's see what her rules are on how to correct this. Let's call up the corrective action procedure if there is one.
This just echoes the clause of the standard. I want to know the trigger events that require her to issue a corrective action. Some of the companies require corrective action if there is a nonconformity. Here it is. It leaves the decision of whether a corrective action should be issued up to top management and also to define what timely means. Okay, is there a corrective action log or some other way these things are tracked? Well, I'm not shocked at this. 27 non-conformances written up in the internal audit, but only 1 corrective action, and no corrective actions written because of either returns or customer complaints. Once again, Miriam is internalizing all of this. Let's see what their process is for dealing with customer complaints. Is there a procedure on that? Here it is. Their definition of complaint is whether one of the customers has asked for formal documentation. They also expect the salesperson to handle as much of this as possible. That's not all bad, but there's no feedback mechanism into the rest of the organization to make anything better. Do you see the problem in that?
Yeah. There's an incentive to cover it up. That might avoid a confrontation but doesn't let the company deal openly with a problem.
Miriam again, you can see what was going through her mind.
What's that?
Everybody was keeping her in the dark. She changed the procedure at some point to let the salespeople deal with their own problems.
Is there some kind of complaint log we can look at?
Nothing. Just as I thought. But we know there are plenty of complaints and returns. Your MDR cage is full of stuff. And in a lot of cases, there's not even an RMA issued. Do you see the problem in that? There is a problem with business control here.
There's one more thing we haven't looked at. What are the company's quality objectives?
Let's see what that looks like. On-time delivery and fallout. That's plausible. Let's see if we can find some data.
Let's see. About 5 years ago, there was some kind of disaster. You all know what that was.
Yep.
It never really did get back to normal, and their response was to lower the objective. 85% on-time delivery means that roughly 1 out of every 6 shipments is showing up late. So they didn't do a good job of fixing their business. They may have had supplier issues. If they had issued a corrective action when they didn't meet their objectives, we will be able to find that out.
There wasn't anything in their management reviews on any of this.
Product quality? This coincided with bringing the bottling line. Do you see what happened? This place was running fine, but they took on the new product line without thinking it through, in my opinion. It's not my job as an auditor to write fiction, but sticking to the facts, they started running into quality problems a couple years ago, and there aren't any corrective actions or other documented actions to fix any of this.
I can see that.
Well, we only have enough data to be dangerous, but I can see what happened. Like I said, it's my job as an auditor to stick to the facts, and that's what I'll do. Let's have the closing meeting at 3:30. I have enough information for now.
Welcome back to Beyond the Dysfunction podcast. Today's guest is Frank, the ISO auditor. Frank, we know that you'd actually love to tell us what's going on with the little company.
Yes, that's right, Nova, and it's a cautionary tale. I see family-run companies and startups get into this kind of situation all the time, and I'd love to make sure your viewers know what's happening.
What's the real problem then, Frank?
In my opinion, this organization lacks leadership commitment. None of the people at the management level are passionate about the business. I see this all the time in startups as well. No one cares as much about the business as the founders.
I can see where that would be a problem.
To top it off, the management just doesn't understand the benefits of the ISO registration as a tool to improve the business. In fact, they don't have any drive for improving it. They don't have the improvement mindset. That's why they've developed a system where the best way to deal with a problem is to hide it.
I can see where that would be a problem.
Problem? It's potentially fatal to the business. A further problem is lack of respect for operating procedures on the part of the management. They're subverting their own quality system. The benefit of the ISO standard is that it requires the company to use process-based thinking to develop consistent processes that produce products and services on a controlled basis.
If they don't even know or follow their own procedures, they can't expect the employees to do so.
I see that sometimes around here at the podcast. There's nothing worse than 2 sets of rules.
That's right, Nova. The third problem is lack of corporate controls. Managers approving their own orders. Managers authorizing their own returns. Company financial controls are weak. No one knows what anything costs or is worth. It goes to the heart of the value of the business.
That sounds serious.
It's very serious. It goes to the very heart of the control systems and is potentially fatal to the business.
Who would you say is to blame for all of this?
The initial blame goes to the founders. They didn't instill the values of humility and continual improvement onto this generation. These managers aren't equipped for the responsibility. But the reason it stays that way is clearly up to the managers themselves. They don't see the need to improve, so they won't.
Well, Frank, good luck with the rest of the audit. This has been Beyond the Dysfunction podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We had our little look around. I don't think we owe you too much explanation. Your equipment? It looks like it was maintained by a drug addict because it was. Your inventory? If you care to go out and look at it, you'll see what kind of condition it's in. We went through a few of the bins, and somewhere around 1/3 of the time, your system thinks it has something that it doesn't. To make it worse, some huge fraction of your inventory is useless because of dirt and damage. It's going to cost me money to dispose of that. You're actually incurring carrying costs to have a dumpster load of material in your place.
Wait a minute. My inventory system says it's fine.
You mean the inventory system that is on the server with the wires falling out of it? That inventory system? No, it's not fine. It'll cost me money to get rid of it. That leaves the processes and procedures that you're supposed to respect, that adds value to the equipment and buildings and turns it into a business. Your business control systems are useless. I knew your father, and I walked into this place when he first opened it up and knew how proud he was of it. But you've managed to drive 90% of the value out of it. So my version of the selling price of this place, when all is said and done, is $4.5 million. That's the value of the land and the convenience factor by keeping the building. The rest of this stuff is gonna go.
Based on a multiple of sales, it's 45.
If I thought it was sustainable, you might have a chance, but I don't think it's sustainable. I'd have to start from scratch, and I can win your customers over just by giving them good service, if I decide to compete with you. Well, it looks like I'll be on my way. But there's one thing more. We went through your accounting system too, which wasn't easy. You're missing about $500,000.
Huh.
Give or take. And I'm not going to tell you who's got it. Have a pleasant afternoon.
Tommy, this is my letter of resignation. It's effective at the end of this sentence. The shit's going to hit the fan in a few minutes.
What? What are you talking about?
Oh, excuse me.
Welcome again to the closing meeting. I'm Frank, your auditor, and it has been a pleasure working with you. On behalf of the registrar, I thank you for your cooperation and the good guide work by Miriam and Carol. I also have to remind you that everything that happens here is confidential and between you and the registrar. I've decided to issue 3 major findings today. The first is in the area of product release. Clause 8.6 of the standard requires the organization, namely you, to implement planned arrangements at appropriate stages in the process to verify that the product requirements have been met. My finding is that there is a systemic breakdown in this process. In your receiving department, there is no evidence of operator training in either receiving or hazmat. There was hazmat received in the plant despite being not properly labeled. There is no SDS in the system, as required by your process. There was evidence of unapproved parts being sent to the customers with no objective evidence of concession. And in your bottling area, there is product being packaged before it meets the specification testing. I find that product is being released without verification, creating a high likelihood of unsafe or unapproved material reaching customers. The second major finding is in the area of infrastructure. Clause 7.1.3 of the standard requires you to provide and maintain the infrastructure necessary for the operation of its processes and to achieve conformity of products and services. My finding is that there is a systemic breakdown in this process. There are alarms in this plant that say maintenance needed, but no evidence of follow-up. There are multiple digital readouts in this plant that are not functional. Preventive maintenance is not being documented, and the CMMC system requiring a maintenance procedure is not being used as required. A production scale was found out of calibration by a factor of 10. The calibration weight is not traceable to NIST, and calibrated equipment is not identified for calibration status. Also, you have a forklift inspection program that is not being properly followed. My finding is that there is a significant likelihood of non-conforming product being produced because of lack of control of this process. My last finding is in the area of non-conforming product. Clause 8.7 of the standard requires you, the organization, to ensure that outputs that do not conform to requirements be controlled to prevent their unintended use or delivery. My finding is that there is a systemic breakdown in this process. Flammable materials are present in this plant without identification or necessary documentation. There are items in the MDR cage that are dispositioned but not removed, contrary to your own operating procedure. There are multiple items in this cage that do not have the required identification. There are unapproved parts in this cage, some of which were released without concession. There is damaged material in inventory without segregation as required in your own MDR procedure, and personnel lack training on counterfeit parts and the RMA process.
Based on all of this, I find significant risk that non-conforming product will reach the customers.
I also have a few observations. The internal audit and corrective action processes here meet the documentation requirements, but there is a failure to use these tools to solve underlying problems in the plant and improve the quality system. There is no evidence of risk assessment or change control functions, despite the addition of an entirely new process that you don't have experience with. Process fallout objectives are not meeting their expectations without resulting corrective actions or other improvement activities. A cybersecurity event occurred without the notification of the custom. I also judge that because your production equipment lacks sufficient controls, you're not able to provide evidence that your scope of supply can include your bottling operation. Therefore, your website is not in conformity with the registrar's requirements. These are my findings. Anything an auditor says can be appealed to the technical committee at the registrar. At the end of the day, it is up to me and you to ensure the integrity of the system. My recommendation will be to recommend recertification. However, I will require a follow-up audit within 90 days to ensure that you've taken sufficient corrective action on these items.
It is possible that the technical committee will decide to deny your registration and will inform you of that after they review my audit documentation.
If there are no further questions, I'll be on my way. Thanks for working with me.
Goodbye for now.